Hey, and welcome to the ProtoPod, the podcast for engineers, innovators, entrepreneurs, and trailblazers shaping the future. Here, we dive into the cutting-edge worlds of prototyping, aerospace, rapid manufacturing, high-velocity mass customization, and beyond. I'm your host, Jordan Rose. Today, we're excited to welcome on Jan Fessl, founder and managing director of FPC USA. With a master's in astronautical engineering from USC, Jan's career spans hardware testing, control systems, and liquid propulsion. He first connected with Protocase while at USC's Liquid Propulsion Lab, where he was featured in our student spotlight. Originally from the Czech Republic, Jan moved to Los Angeles about 10 years ago. Since then, he has helped expand FPC, a global leader in test infrastructure solutions across North America, supporting industries from aerospace to defense. Hey Jan, welcome into the show. Super excited to have you on today. I've read your bio. You have a really interesting educational and personal journey, I think, that kind of has culminated now in you founding FPC USA and being the managing director. Are you able to give the audience an idea of what that journey has been from growing up in, I believe, the Czech Republic?
Yeah, sure. So, thanks for having me. It's my first podcast, so it's for a first time. But yeah, I guess my journey starting in Czech. So for those who don't know, that's in Central Europe. But yeah, it's a really beautiful country. I grew up there, went to college there for electrical engineering, and essentially what got me moved to US was that I wanted to work at SpaceX. So that was the reason, and figured out probably the best way to do that is to move to US. So I did my master's at USC in LA, because essentially I googled what's the university with the maximum amount of number employees at SpaceX. So that's what came out. That's what I applied to.
Excellent idea.
Didn't end up working there.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the path took me elsewhere. But at the university, that's where I got involved with Protocase the first time. So I was a student at Liquid Propulsion Lab, USC LPL, where we were developing liquid rocket engines. So a lot of fun. A group of students just building up rocket engines and going into desert to fire them or blow them up. It either went one way or the other. But that's where I get exposed to Protocase the first time. So we were building test stands and a lot of data acquisition units, and a custom enclosure came pretty handy there. So that's the first time. And after school, I ended up working at Hyperloop, a Virgin Hyperloop, which was a startup to build a high-speed train in a vacuum tube, where I was a test engineer or a hardware test engineer. So again, pretty similar. It's kind of funny how it goes, but pretty similar to what I was doing at LPL. So again, building test stands for really good hardware. And then essentially after like 3-4 years after that company, I saw a lot of the challenges that it comes with designing test stations, and figure out that there's probably a lot of companies dealing with that same type of problem. So that's what lead me to FPC, and then starting that in USA, where we built test stations for any company that's building any hardware. So either being an electronics, electromechanical, anything actuator, we help them to build the test stations. So essentially, like my sort of journey, it always was sort of connected with testing. I never really aspired to be a test engineer. I didn't really even know it's a job description, but it sort of happened that I always got sort of stuck with the testing. But I end up really enjoying that. It's I get to learn about a lot of cool products that our customers are working with. So sort of every project is different, every day is different. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Very interesting. So you had ambitions to work with SpaceX, ended up forging your own path. Very obviously interesting work that you would do with liquid propulsion and other test engineering projects. You had mentioned in there that in your work experience directly following your master's that you have found some issues in the test engineering field, and you were looking to solve them, and that kind of led you to founding FPC USA. Can you describe in a little bit more detail what those issues were?
Yeah. So essentially, any company that's developing any hardware, most of the resources and the engineering goes to into designing that actual product, because that's what the company is gonna end up selling and making money. But usually the testing is sort of an afterward, but really important part, like before you ship it out to customers, or put any humans in it, or whatever the product is intended to be doing. You need to test it to make sure it's safe, and also the testing will help you to improve the product, because things never work the first time, especially in the hardware world, and there's a lot of iterations. And uh, for especially if the product is really complex, and like nowadays they're getting more and more complex, the testing becomes complex as well, because there's just so much scenarios you need to test for everything. It's more data, higher speeds, and whatnot. So you need to develop a lot of hardware and software to actually test the product, so you can make sure that it works as expected. uh, and in a lot of the companies, not enough resources was allocated to that, and it was always behind. And testing always, it's at the end of the project, so there's always not enough time, not enough money, not enough people. So that's sort of the basic like thesis behind it. And also a lot of the infrastructure for any type of testing, even if the products are really really different from each other, if it goes on a helicopter, if it goes on a drone, if it goes in a car, the test infrastructure is really similar. So like 80% of it's same across a lot of products. So we develop a lot of the infrastructure, so a lot of the software for like collecting the data, an operator interface, a lot of the hardware that goes into like the signal routing, all the test equipment and stuff like that. Where customer approaches us, we're pretty much 80% done, and then it's just final
Tweaking.
customization of that. Yeah, exactly. So we can save so much. We save the customer so much time and so much headaches, so they don't have to develop a software that actually for them doesn't provide a direct value. It's like just cost for them, because it doesn't tie to their revenue. So we
Right.
essentially help them with a lot of the background non-sexy engineering that, like, let's say it's a lot of behind the scenes, but it helps them to get the product faster to market, and just and limit their time in testing.
That's really interesting. So, strikes a lot of similarities for myself with what we do here, being a mass custom manufacturer. So, we take mass production principles and apply it to custom work, and that manifests in us being able to do custom sheet metal work or CNC machining work really, really fast, because we've kind of taken the craft out of it, out of each job by systemizing the repeatable elements. And it sounds like that's very similar to what you guys have done, making systems for the things that are similar amongst the systems. Can you maybe describe for me how that has transpired for you? So how have you actually developed those systems? What has that been like? Given that you are the managing director, you have all this technical experience, how the systems have to work, but how have you created the system for producing what your customers need? Probably faster, because you're already 80% of the way there, and probably a little bit less expensive.
Got it. Yeah. First of all, I like the term like mass custom manufacturing. I'll take a note for it and use it somewhere. That's pretty.
Absolutely.
It's, uh, but yeah, I mean, and I feel like especially the custom space, it's really hard to develop like any, let's say, products, because like you can always say like, oh, like everyone needs something slightly different. So just like finding the commonalities across the different projects. So we've seen hundreds of projects, so that gives us the benefit of like, if you in a single company, you, let's say, do 5, 10, 15 projects maybe over 2 years, we see a much more of them from different industries, from different companies, even from different location. So that gives us a better idea like what's actually needed and where are the overlaps. And then it's like really focusing on what the customer wants, because sometimes the product, like, customer doesn't come to you and like, oh, like we would like to have this product, but it's actually like listening to the customers and and learning like what their pain points are.
Mm-hmm.
And because like I mean, customer is always right. It's a cliche, but at the end of the day, like we our boss is the customer always. So I think it's really working with them throughout the process. So making sure that we understand what they need, and then through the actual implementation, and then especially even afterwards, like after they use our solutions, like hey, how is it working for you? What do you wish that could have done better? Because I mean, a lot of the stuff we do, it's a prototype work, so there's always a ways you can do it. You can do it better for the second time in terms of it doesn't have to be even a failure, but like any maintenance, like hey, I wish this part was easier to remove, because like this part is usually wears out, let's say after 2-3 months, and
Yep.
just like all these like small boring things can make a big difference over a long time. So it's not like a hey, we're developing this cool new technology and like we're going to change the world, but sometimes it's just like a small things like hey, maintenance, making sure that everything is ergonomic, and then just like by baby steps, over if you extrapolate it over multiple years, it actually equates to like a really good product that the customer comes back to, and really likes that, and including the customer in the process, so like they feel they being heard. So like hey, if they have some feedback a few months from there, they actually see the difference.
Yeah, it always amazes me talking to yourself and other customers who have appeared on the show, and how much similarity there is to how you approach your customers as we approach ours. And you said it in there. You talked about the pain points, and we talk about that a lot. Is how do we solve the customer's pain? And it sounds like you guys are approaching it in a very similar way, where we try to, we talk about the one-stop shop. We try to keep things very simple for people and solve as many of their problems as we can. I was hoping you could expand on exactly what that scope of work is for FPC, because I know, you talk a little bit about building test equipment and integrating it. But what is that full scope of work for you guys? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's both software and hardware. So it's essentially simplifying for the customer. If I take it first from the software perspective, uh, simplifying the using of the test station for them as much as we can. So they don't have to deal with a lot of uh, like let's say developing all the software to control all the hardware to actually develop the test. For them, it's just easy plug and play. They can just easily set what they want to test. I have this test report. I want to see this on the operator interface and stuff like that. So they can just do like the final customization. So we do all
Right.
the groundwork for them. Uh, and I guess in like a Protocase analogy would be like, I just want these cutouts here, but like I don't
Mm.
have to worry about like, and I can just set like the box sizes, but I don't have to care about anything else. Like me as a non-mechanical engineer, I just care about the cutouts. That's where I
Yep.
guess my value added in that design process is. But I don't understand like what bolt sizes I should use, like if it should be welded or bolted together. Like for me, like I don't
Doesn't
really
matter.
care, but
Yeah.
but those things are important. So we're
Yep.
we're essentially doing the same thing. So the customer cares that it should be doing the testing that it should be. So they just do the final customization. Like, hey, I want to power up the test article, and then provide these inputs and read this outputs and see this test report. So they are abstracted from all the nitty and gritty that goes into the test station. So
Right.
that's on the software side, and on the mechanical, I would say it's a little bit less productized because it's a mechanical interface.
Yep.
So a lot of that is custom, but then it's also a lot about like that I talk about like the maintenance and like easy of use, replacing parts, just making sure that everything is accessible. So it's mainly on like the ergonomic and like industrial engineering side.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a fairly expansive scope of work to me. What I'm curious as to is to how you have, what skills, I guess, do you think you have developed, in your time, both as an engineer and now as managing director, to lead a team of individuals, or with lead within an organization, to accomplish such a wide array of tasks for your customers. How is that? I guess how has that personal development looked for you? What skills have you had to learn, or we're naturally really good at? I'm just curious because it sounds like it's a big task.
I feel like I'm not naturally good at anything, to be honest. And
So
I don't.
modesty is number one.
No, but I would say, and uh, I think one thing that I'm glad that I kind of end up in a test engineering realm.
Okay.
It's you get to learn a lot of everything. So it's not just electrical, it's not just mechanical, it's not just software engineering, but you get to learn a lot about everything. And I think especially it was good at like early on in my career that I was just like didn't get like bogged down into like analysis or just mechanical engineering. At least for me, like some people can get experts like in their field, and they're just like, hey, they're just really good, world class at that thing. Uh, but I think there's like the other side of like where you have a breadth instead of depth, and being sort of like knowing a little bit of everything, which then enables you to put more complex projects together because like you understand a little bit of electrical mechanical, so then you can work with mechanical engineer who knows the in and outs, but you can ask the right questions, kind of understand like where the limits are, what's possible and what's not, and then work between different engineers, and then eventually like being able to lead that team. And that's what we like to have like at FPC as well, just people who are just not just electrical engineers, like hey, if it's mechanical issue, it's not my problem, but just people who are able to wear multiple hats. That's what I like about this engineering the most, because you get to kind of learn about everything, and then sort of like the project management and all the soft skill or
Yeah.
whatever, that kind of come like there's the only way to learn is by doing it. So you make a bunch of mistakes uh, through projects. It's good to reflect like what went wrong and what went well, and you just kind of improve as you go.
Yeah, I think that's a great kind of overview of things. Like, so it's a mix of both hard skills, the mechanical, electrical, what have you, engineering skills, as well as the soft skills, collaboration, the social skills. I wonder, for you, do you think that the culture at FPC plays a big part in that? I know you mentioned a second ago, you don't really like that. It's not my subsystem, and I would agree with that. I think that's kind of an icky thing to happen. It doesn't breed much innovation. I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on that, and how the culture at FPC kind of counters that. What do you guys do to make sure that you are collaborating effectively?
Yep, that I think is, I would say like our biggest advantage. Is like then we care that like the project gets done and like customer is happy, but it's not. If it's somebody else's problem, I don't care, and I think that's super important, and that's not something you can just like train people on. That sort of like needs to be in the DNA, which sounds like a little like a cliche, but it's super important because like things, especially in the prototype, like we're building prototypes. It's not like a serial production assembly line, so like things will go wrong. Like essentially every test station we're
Yep.
essentially building for the first time, so things will not fit together. Something will not work as expected, but it's important to just like always have the solve problem attitude, and not just like hey, it's broken, but it's actually in the solving problem. That's where the most fun is. As an engineer, it's like we like to solve problems. So I think that's something we spend a lot of time on. That like it's always our problem. It's not like hey, it's someone else's problem, but it's problem like who has the knowledge to fix it. Uh, people have expertise in different things. Like how can I find the people? Like everyone has direct line to everybody, so it's not just like, hey, I will send an email, wait 3 days for response. You can just call the person comes right away and then fixes it right there. And if it's something more complex, it takes more time, but it gets we get into the problem solving like as fast as we can, and essentially remove the any communication barriers as much as we can. So it's not a bureaucracy like I need to talk to the manager of a manager of a manager, which sometimes happen in the big companies. But I can just call the person who designed it right away. If let's say I'm a technician building that, the engineer comes by right away, and then we fix it right there, and then making sure that we don't make the mistake again. So I think that's super important for us, just to stay as a team, stay small, stay nimble, and sort of like in a like a never-ending startup, like always day one, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. That's it's interesting. Again, that's something we talk about quite a lot, and it's that idea of eliminating latency. So instead of sending an email to somebody to answer a question, just go grab them, and that
Yeah,
allows you to iterate a lot faster. And I think the other piece that I picked out of that is really what you talked about before as well, is that it's all about the customer, right? And the goal is to get the customer problem solved and as quickly as possible by reducing those latencies. I wonder, obviously, again, a multitude of different pieces of test equipment that you're developing, processes. Everything's pretty unique, or could be. That 20% is at the very least. There's a lot of problems to be solved, and that's what I wanted to ask about. Is there, apart from keeping concentrated on and focused on the customer, and being your goal, as well as having this reduction in latency always front of mind, are there any other project development principles or ideas that you guys follow to make sure that you are solving these problems well and on time for your customers?
yeah, I think risk, it's always involved, so it's always good to understand, because like even the simplest project has some risks.
Yep.
So I think it's really important to understand them and communicate them well. So it's like, if we're planning a project, it's not just like, oh, it should take about 3 months, but let's say, hey, in 3 months, we think we usually do in 3 months, but here are some risks that are associated with that. So it can be like a supply chain. Hey, we know that this component takes a long time to get, or it can be anything else, like, hey, our workload is higher, there is some risk we might be running behind, and then essentially writing them down and how can we mitigate them. So it's again like a cliche, but like all of the stuff, it's sort of cliche, and it's simple but not easy, and that's really important, because then you can, like, not all risks are equal. So like, you have some big risk, like, hey, if we mess this design part, like, oh, the iteration is only like 3 weeks, so that's a big thing. So like, how can we make sure, how can we, let's say, maybe just 3D print it, making sure that the mechanism that we come up with or the interface works, because like, it's not software, but like kind of bringing the software mindset into, like, let's get into the prototype of a prototype as fast as we can, so we can see something. Because seeing the things in a physical world, it's completely different than on a CAD on a screen, and essentially buying down the risk as much as we can, and then at some point also accepting them. So like, you cannot mitigate them to zero. Things can always go wrong, but at least like, if it goes wrong, it's like, oh, it was this. You can go back to it, like, hey, how can we do it? How can we do it the next time? So I think risk is something we talk about a lot, even for small projects, so we can mitigate them, and then it goes sort of to the product questions that we talked about before. If we see a lot of similar risks across projects that can cause delays, well, there is an opportunity for a product that might solve the risk. So
Yeah.
I would say risk is something people don't talk about a lot, but I think it's, especially in like hardware prototyping, it's super important to understand them as much as you can, and refine them as you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. We speak about risk, or talk about them quite often in project development internally at the company. We talk about them using different language. We call them known unknowns. But the idea is fundamentally the exact same: is you identify those as quickly as possible, because they are going to determine what your critical path of your project is going to be. You have to address them, you have to mitigate them. And I think, it's very, very well said. It's very interesting to me how, from different directions, we're coming to the same conclusions. And even to the extent that you're talking about how you're developing a product, once you find the commonalities, again, it's very similar internally. I can't help but just recall the similarities, and that we talk about that as turning it from a project into a process. So when you find those similarities, then it becomes mass, and it becomes a process rather than a project. So just thought I would articulate that, because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I think a process, it's a form of product as well.
Exactly.
I would say.
Exactly.
And if you have a good process, it's easy to train people on it. And like, process in its own, or like a company in its own, it's a product. and that's like underappreciated sometimes as well, because it's not just like a process, a written procedure on a piece of paper or some automation, but just like especially process when people inputs are involved in something for collaboration. It's really underappreciated. So yeah, when you said process, it kind of click with me.
Yeah, absolutely. On that, you have all of these different projects that you guys have worked on over the years. Is there anyone that sticks out into in your mind as your favorite, or was the most impactful on you for whatever reason?
I don't think I have a single favorite one. It's hard to pick. I think what I like when it's something new, that like, let's say we haven't seen, those are my favorite. So we get into like really the research or like the development of how to do things. So I think it's always exciting to have something new. So we really like to like, and especially if like, let's say other companies or other like competitors like decided not to do it, like do something new, like take some of that risk if we're feeling up to it, and do something new. So I think those are my favorite projects, when there's, let's say, a reasonable amount of unknown. You don't want to have a lot of them, but those are the most fun, because that's where you get to learn most, and that's where you make the big difference.
Absolutely.
But it's
go ahead.
And I would say, like, yeah, it's cool to just see maybe the products that we test like in practice, whether it's being in some commercial electronics or then in some like high stake applications for like defense and aerospace. It's just cool to like just know that like the equipment that we deliver, like it's used in a really critical applications where that stuff needs to work. It's just cool to be small part of that whole process. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that you made it come together and you solved the problem. I think that's absolutely where the satisfaction should come from. I wonder if there's anybody who's listening who maybe, in your shoes 5-10 years ago, as a young engineer, doing work, in test engineering or otherwise, and kind of looking to move in the direction that you have, becoming a leader within your organization now as the managing director. Would you give them a certain piece of advice that was most helpful to you?
Yeah, I never seek that like leadership position or anything, and I think usually like the people who seek that are not the right people. It's another cliche. I feel like we should have a cliche count. But so I think it sort of needs to come naturally. And I think you should just focus on like doing the things you enjoy the most, which should be, I think, in order, like if you want to grow in your, either can be career or like just like as a person, just like don't stop learning. I see it a lot when sort of like we're used to learn a lot in school and then like maybe at the first job, but then a lot of people just sort of plateau and like keeps doing the same thing. And as long as you keep learning and like being willing to take on new things and like new responsibility, the other stuff will kind of follow naturally.
I love that. We, again, to echo myself, but we talk about that a lot, and the term that we use is the informal becoming the formal. And I think that is absolutely, what you've said, articulated so well. And I think that's probably why you're in the seat that you are. Jan, if folks listening are looking to find FPC and check you guys out, maybe they need some test equipment designed, where would they find you guys?
Yep. So we have a website, funtestfpc.com. So yeah, if there's any company out there making any hardware and needs any testing help, just reach out, or reach out directly to me on LinkedIn or anywhere, and we'll be happy to help you.
Awesome. Jan, thank you so much. It's been super great chatting with you and getting to learn a little bit more about what you guys do and how you do it. And we definitely look forward to having you on the show again in the future.
Yeah, no, likewise. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yep. Take care.